I am really excited to start this new campaign. Let's go ahead and get those characters started.
I am so excited. I have been thinking about my character, what I want to be, what I want to do, my concepts. It's just been on my mind for like a week now. I am ready.
All right. Before you get started, though, let me go over the species and races that are not going to be allowed at this campaign. Starting with Aarakocra, Asimar, Bugbear, Centaur, Changeling, Dogar, Fairy, Furblog, Jensai, Gith, Goblin, Goliath, Grug, Haragon, Hobgoblin, Kalistar, Kenku, Kobold, Lionin, Lizardfolk, Loxodon, Minotaur, Orc, Alkin, Satyr, Tabaxi, Tortle, Triton, Warforged, Yanti, Hexblood, Reborn.
Nothing is more exciting than starting a brand new campaign or adventure. As a player, you start thinking about, man, what is my class going to be? What is my race or species going to be? And you start getting excited and feeling like I'm going to create this amazing character. And you start thinking about the spells you're going to choose. And you get to your table and you tell your DM, I want to be this and I want to have this class and this species. And then your DM says, no. And you just feel all that excitement drain away from you. Hi, my name is Anthony Darkson.
And I'm Roland Shadow.
And together, we are the Twin Dragons. Welcome to our channel, where we discuss everything tabletop role-playing games.
Today we're going to talk about a couple of different things, especially when it comes to character creation at the beginning of an actual adventure or campaign. And some of the choices that can be made that may conflict with what the Dungeon Master or Game Master will allow.
To start off, let's discuss some of the races or species that Dungeon Masters may have a problem with. And let's discuss why, and maybe if there might be a solution for it. So, what's the first one that you can think of that comes to mind that Dungeon Masters usually say, nope, not gonna allow it?
Biggest one I think would be anything with wings on it that has natural flight. Nothing can really mess up balance as much as natural flight.
So what are some problems that flight can bring up that you feel like causes those imbalances?
Well, first thing, encounter balancing. If you're anywhere outside of a enclosed area, as in a dungeon or a cave, a small cave, obviously the character with flight can just go above, past the danger, and just rain down hell on the enemy, which then puts them at a distinct advantage over the encounter, which then minimizes the challenge.
I think some of the other players in that group might feel like they are being kind of left behind when it comes to the amount of action that's happening, or they feel like they're not doing as much as then that person with flight. So maybe the players might feel a little kind of like, man, I wish I had that.
And that's true. The players will actually feel a little bit left out when the flying ranger with wings just rains down arrows and hell upon all his enemies, and everybody else is just standing on the ground, just doing the best they can.
Another reason why some dungeon masters may say no to characters with flight naturally is that they might be able to overcome obstacles too easily that was set in place. Thinking about, the challenge of how we're going to cross this river that's raging. Well, the character with flight says, I got it, and just flies right over. Or maybe there's a large gorge where your characters were supposed to climb their way down because you had something special down there, But the character with flight said, no, I'm good, and just flies right over and misses whatever encounter or obstacle or challenge that you had under the gorge,
leaving the rest of the players behind.
But should the dungeon master say no to this? Can we not come up with a solution?
Well, some solutions are given in the various source books and material. One of the solutions is being limited in use, right? So spells, obviously, that give flight are limited because it is a resource. You have to burn those resources. So that does help. But when it comes to natural flight, it's really hard to put a limitation on it if the creature species just can do it at will.
Well, I feel like you should allow it because as a DM, there are many things that you can do to help solve for encounter balances and prepare for situations knowing that you have a player with flight.
But at the same time, now that puts the burden on the game master to try to balance it out where it doesn't put a light or shining a light onto the actual player with wings and make them the star that comes up with the solutions to the problems that the DM made for the flight character, leaving everybody else behind still wondering, oh, well, that's nice that there was a challenge made for, or an obstacle made for the flying character. Has nothing to do with the rest of us, but cool.
Or you just think about the obstacles that you're creating and make sure that, hey, will that character with flight have an advantage? And making sure that you maybe decide a different obstacle or challenge.
Pure dungeon crawl. Can't even reach the ceiling. Can't touch the ceiling. Can't fly past the ceiling.
So there are options where limiting the space of the character with flight, of course, can overcome some of those challenges with raining down arrows on a battlefield.
But then at the same time, the character who created that flying creature now feels less because they're unable to use an ability that they wanted to in the first place, which is the reason they picked said character.
True. Well, thinking about encounter balances, a way to combat characters with flight with encounter balancing is having monsters with arrows, bows and arrows, or crossbows. And knowing that if I see someone flying, I'm probably going to go aim at them. So now you're spreading some of that damage across the group, and you have ranged combatants that will then now focus on that the flying player. So now that flying player has to decide how they're going to make sure that they can still attack like they want, but they can't stay up there too long because now they became a target.
But at the same time, now you're creating more challenges for the game master or dungeon master to actually maintain 3D combat, which is not something that a less experienced dungeon master will be able to do without much difficulty.
That's one race or species that has an innate ability that dungeon masters may have a problem with. Well, there's some more too. Sometimes I hear about dungeon masters may say no to centaurs.
There's a interesting thing about having a scene where you have your paladin riding another character class that's a character that's a centaur battling some other creature. It's just something's not right about it.
True. I understand and I agree with that. But as a player, it sounds great. It sounds really cool. But there are some challenges with that and opportunities.
Some of the challenges is going to be sizing. Obviously, there's going to be issues when it comes to spacing in various adventures and various challenges that may come up where a medium to large character, technically large because it's a horse, might find themselves in.
Yeah. What if you have a cave that they must go through? And in that cave, the quarter becomes smaller and smaller. Well, a full-size horse/centaur wouldn't be able to fit in a smaller confined space. So dungeon, cave, etc.
Sizing can be a problem for a lot of other species, but with the centaur, it comes with a little bit more nuance than just size. As I said before, you can technically have another character, another player, ride that centaur. And that just seems strange to me.
I don't know. I still think as a player it's a cool concept, but I would focus more on the other challenges that come up with it, such as getting on a boat, right? Centaur may have a challenge getting on a boat, especially if it's a smaller boat. If you're in a pirate-based campaign and most of your play is on a ship, might cause some logistical challenges for a centaur player.
There are other races that actually have some challenges that the game master just might not want to deal with. One of the species being Kenku. So the Kenku race actually is interesting into the fact that the creature actually speaks in mimic. So it actually talks in other voices, saying lines to try to get its point across. It can be a challenge if the player tries to work it out with the game master, but at the same time, the game master just might get annoyed of it after a time.
Might get annoyed of it after a time?
Might get annoyed of it after a time.
Might get annoyed after a time?
As you can see, they might get annoyed. So, what other challenges do you see that comes up between a player and a dungeon master when it comes to character creation?
I think one of the decisions a dungeon master makes in the beginning of a campaign with his players, which can be controversial, is multi-class or no multi-classing.
Now, safe to say, I'll probably bet that most dungeon masters allow multi-classing. But the problem does come up of min-maxing and the powers and challenges of encounter building and balancing after that.
I think this is another example of a player who wants to design a certain type of character and feels like multi-classing will allow them to be that specific type of character by having a combination of classes that truly bring their character to life.
But at the same time, you are now creating a character more unique, which is good, but at the same time can be a challenge for the game master or even for the other players to actually compete with that character. Because especially at the lower levels, nobody beats a multi-classed character. For an example,
A Gloomstalker Ranger multi-classed with Rogue Assassin sneaking through the shadows, peeking around corners, getting an automatic crit with those sneak attack dice, and just ending whatever monster you had around that corner.
Obviously, that poses a challenge for the game master in balancing, but at the same time, your party may think that's cool at first, but then after the 100th time and the rest of the party saying, hey, do we get to roll dice once in a while? May come up.
I think if I was that Ranger Rogue, I still think that's pretty awesome though.
Another one that comes up very often is Warlock / pretty much anything else. That is always, especially at the lower level, when a Hexblade, Warlock does create an imbalance with the rest of the players of the party.
Now, multi-classing, although front-loaded to be very powerful, actually loses a lot of its potency at the higher levels. So, if you do run a campaign or adventure at a higher level, some of the single-classed players may actually outperform or be stronger than the multi-class, especially spellcasters.
At the same time, you can just make the argument that spellcasters will beat everybody in the end. What are you going to do?
That is true. So, You? What do you think? Multiclassing or no?
I think once again it is up to the game master, like any other answer is. But at the same time, there should be a lot of consideration to this. Yes, multiclassing can be fun, but in the end, playing any class with a group of friends and having a great time that way is all that truly matters. Do you have to min-max? Do you have to be the best of everything to have a good time? No. I mean, it's nice once in a while, but at the same time, for the overall campaign, you'll have a good time regardless of what class you pick.
Now, there's always the potential that the combination the player chooses is not normally a synergistic combination. It's more for flavor. Have you ever seen a Bard Monk?
I don't want to.
It doesn't work well. Now, I'm sure there are some DMs out there or number crunchers who could probably make it work, but it normally is not synergistic. So maybe the character who they thought might be a great combination turns out to be actually a lot weaker, and they feel like they maybe not be pulling the weight that they could have been in a battle situation.
Whether you choose to multi-class or not between the players and the DM, just remember, out there somewhere, there's a lowly fighter swinging his sword and then ending his turn and doing nothing else.
At least the fighter can accent search.
I swing my sword twice. Move on.
Another part of character creation or character advancement, specifically for spellcasters, is choosing a spell. And man, there are some doozy spells out there. Some of them, DMs might actually say, no, I'm not going to allow that.
There have been some controversial spells out there that have given DMs pause since they've been published. One of my favorites out there is the infamous, not so infamous, Silvery Barbs.
I love Silvery Barbs. I think it is a great spell. So, what does Silvery Barbs do?
Silvery Barbs is a reaction spell which allows the caster to impose disadvantage on a creature when it comes to either attack rolls or saving throw rolls and or skill checks. And then, in turn, afterwards, turn around and give an advantage to one of his players.
And it's a level 1 spell.
Now you may think that, oh, that's not too bad. Think of this. Even at higher levels, if your cleric needs his spell to stick on a big baddie, and all it takes is for a multi-classed level 1 wizard, level 4 warrior to cast Silvery Barbs on as a reaction to the saving throw of the enemy to give the enemy disadvantage, and then in turn after that go to the rogue and say, hey, you know what, you get advantage on your next attack for a level 1 spell, will definitely ruin that bad guy's day.
I don't see a problem with it. I think it is a great spell to create excitement around the table, to change the dynamic of a battle, gets your players excited when the spellcaster says, well, now you have advantage, and now that other player with advantage says, let's do it. And it just creates excitement. I feel like it's a fine spell to allow.
From a game master's perspective, I think that it is a little too overbalanced and presents problems when it comes to encounter building and the balancing of those encounters, due to the fact that it will just allow more your players rolling over all your encounters with little challenge. Another spell that does cause some problems and challenges, with which a DM may decide to either forbid or limit, is summoning spells. Now, I'm not talking about the newer summoning spells where you summon one creature that is a helper. and can contribute to the combat. I'm talking about the summoning spells that gives you 8 to 16 creatures that you get to add to the board.
Now, as the caster of that spell, being able to summon an army of squirrels sounds exciting, and I'm for it.
As a game master, having to deal with 8 new tokens that now the one wizard has control over, and I don't like it. It takes the combat down to a stall. It drags out even longer, as now that one player takes more time to move all the pieces, to roll all the attacks, to do everything that all those extra creatures now has to do. It just brings whatever raging battle combat that's actually going on and back and forth and excitement to everybody sitting down and wait until the scroll goes.
Now, of course, as you said, I do understand that it will be a detriment to the other players and their experience. Even though that caster is going to have a great time, the other characters will feel it.
Now, there are some things you can do to actually alleviate some of that pressure. You don't have to ban the spell, but limiting the amount of creatures that he can summon with that spell is just fine. As some spells allows you to pick a combination of amount of creatures versus hit dice, just take the lesser amount with the larger hit dice creatures. Less to deal with, but still contributes to the actual encounter.
That actually reminds me, another overpowered combination of summoning is summoning pixies. And those pixies technically have the polymorph ability to cast polymorph. So you can have multiple pixies just casting polymorph on your group or the enemies.
I would just take away the ability of the pixies to cast the spell, if you wish to continue still casting that spell regardless, instead of banning the spell outright.
It comes down to how you can limit it without just saying no.
Now, when it comes to the higher level spells and abilities, there's not really too much of a concern due to the fact that you will be dealing with stronger enemies that have tricks up their sleeves to either counter or get past whatever challenges that you can give to the enemy. So these are just some of the challenges that can come up when creating a new character for that new campaign between the players and the dungeon master.
So it comes down to just having a conversation between the DM and the player and discussing what's allowed, what's not allowed, or maybe what we can adjust or change.
Another thing to consider is looking at the other players and what they're picking and their choices are. I know that you want to play the character you just want to play, but at the same time, take a look at the other players and what they're coming up with. You don't want to be that one guy that overshadows everybody else and ruins their character ideas and or their campaign and the enjoyment they're going to have.
And I think for the DMs, when working with your players on builds that you might have certain feelings about based off of your experience, is to approach it with a yes, but approach instead of just saying no. The last thing you want to do is really just discourage the player and really drain that excitement out of them.
So can you have a player with natural wings? Yes, but let's say that they're not fully developed. You haven't flown around them your whole life, so they are weak. So your flight is limited in time and use per day.
And if your player comes up to you and says, I want a multi-class, a bard and a monk, it's okay for the DM to say, well, yes, but let me give you a little bit more information and what that looks like and what you may experience down the road, so that player knows what they might be running into if there's challenges or if they may become a little too overpowered.
You can have a summoning spell to summon multiple creatures, but please take in consideration of the amount of creatures that you'll put out there that may affect the enjoyment of other players as they wait for you to eventually do all the moves for every one of those tokens and creatures.
Yes, just allow silvery barbs. Yes, it's a little powerful for a level 1. It's not going to end your encounter, I promise. It'll just create some excitement with the players.
But if your 9th level wizard is doing nothing but downcasting silvery barbs and using all their spell slots for nothing but that, just to annoy the crap out of you.
If the wizard is okay using up those vital fireball spell slots for silvery barbs, I think that's a fair trade-off.
Maybe after level 3 spell slots, no, but a level 2 spell slots, 1s and 2s, that's a lot of silvery barbs.
There's only a couple of good spells at level 2, so I'll give you that one.
So, what this all comes down to is, once again, have a conversation between the players and the dungeon masters and take in consideration everyone's enjoyment and experiences that everybody will have. The point of the game is for everyone to have fun, even the game master.
But as the game master, make sure you're not just saying no because it might give you a little bit of more challenge if the benefit is giving the player an amazing experience.
We would love to hear from you. Let us know about the various challenges when it comes to character creation and the combinations of classes or species that has come up in your campaigns.
And if you like this video, make sure to hit that thumbs up and like and subscribe, as we have more videos and content coming out soon. Until then, see you next time.